Hi everyone, Kelly here, and I am back doing another try a chapter of books that I am considering unhauling. I've done a few videos in this series, so I'll link the playlist down below. And so I'm just picking some books that I'm considering taking off my shelves permanently, but I just want to give them a chance because I'm just not sure yet. So I'm going to give them a chapter, see if they pull me in. Hi, Editing Kelly here. Real quick, I just wanted to say that there's a couple times in this video where I say some quotes from the books, from the beginning of these books, and there will be some content in those quotes and some words that wouldn't be appropriate for young children. So if you're watching this with your kids, you might want to pause and watch it later. Thanks, back to the video. So this time I have a bit of a theme. I picked contemporary books, so all of these are kind of like contemporary, either just like there's some adult contemporary and some YA contemporary. I think all of them might have a little bit of a romance or something in it as well, and also they are authors that I have never read before, so it's kind of like that's why they kind of are on the chopping block, because I don't know anything about these authors, have never read anything about them before. 3 of them were books that were gifted to me, so I'm like not fully invested, and 2 of them were ones I had I don't think I had even heard somebody talk about. It was like something that I had purchased, like I was just in the mood for some young adult contemporary, and so I just like looked on Book Outlet what they had available. That was like 2 years ago, so I still hadn't gotten around to them. So stuff like that were just books that had been sitting on my shelf that I didn't know really much about. So let's go through what they are real quick, and then I will go through like actually synopsis when I read the chapters, because I have not read the backs of these books probably since I got them, so I don't really know much of what they're about. So first, the adult books, I have The Simplicity of Cider by Amy E. Reichert. My sister-in-law gave me these first 3 books. She often will not keep books, so she'll read them, and if she thinks I'm gonna like them, she'll pass them on to me. And she gave me, I think, 3 different books by this author, so I want to try her out and see. If I don't think I'm going to like her books, I might just get rid of all 3 of the books, or maybe I'll give the other ones a try, but this is definitely one that I want to make sure if that's an author I'm actually interested in. I have Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe by Heather Weber, and I do remember when I had looked this up on Goodreads that out of all of these, I think this has the best rating, so hopefully this will turn out to be a good one. And then the last adult one is Season of the Dragonflies by Sarah Creech. So none of those I had heard of before they were gifted to me. And then I have the 2 YA that I bought, based basically just on the fact that they were YA contemporary romance. I got The Season of You and Me by Robin Constantine. And the reason I never picked this up is that, I don't know, for some reason this cover just never really drew me in. I don't know, it just seemed a little cheesy, so I want to see if that's really the tone of the book or if it would be interesting. And the last one is The Loose Ends Playlist by Carrie Firestone. And I did actually hear about this from another booktuber a long time ago, and so I picked it up, but I didn't really look into reviews or anything like that. It was just based on one person's review a couple years ago, so it just never pulled me in because, like, once again, this cover does not really like suck me in. So these are the 5 books that I'm going to try. I'm gonna get started. You'll hear my kids in the background, stuff like that. We're just hanging out. It's a little chilly though, so if it gets to where I need to go in, you might see me in a different background later on in the video. Okay, so I decided to start with the young adult books because I figured they'll be fast to get through the beginning, because usually you can kind of jump into a young adult book, and I thought that would make starting this video faster. So I started with the Loose Ends list, and yeah, okay, I'll tell you what I think in just a moment, but let me tell you what it says on the back, the description. So we're following a teenager named Maddie, and she's spending the last few months before college trying to tie up her high school loose ends along with her best friends. So things that they didn't get to do in high school, but that they want to get done before college. So they're kind of making that list. But then her grandmother drops a bombshell for her and says that she is dying, and that she's taking the entire family on a cruise in order to kind of spend time together before she dies. It doesn't say on the back what she's dying of or anything like that. So yeah, so that's what this book is about. So I didn't even make it through the first chapter of this. I made it 8 pages, and that was enough. I'm definitely not going to be finishing this book, because let me just tell you some of the things that happened in the first 8 pages. So it starts with Maddie and her best friend Lizzie working on their loose ends list, so the things they want to do in that summertime between high school and college. And one of the things that they're talking about is going on a road trip, and Maddie's saying how Lizzie missed out on the road trip last year after her dad found a topless selfie. And then Graham, she's talking about grandmother, how Graham says Lizzie leaves nothing to the imagination, which is pretty ironic coming from an elderly woman with a library full of VHS porn. So that's how we're getting introduced to Grandma. And then she's going through all of the things on her loose ends list. And number 6 is talking about finding a drive-in to, but then she plans on doing it with her friends instead of her boyfriend, because her boyfriend will just try to bone me again. And then number 7, right after that, number 6, is let Ethan try to bone me again. Okay, and then she talks about what happened the first time they tried to have sex and it didn't go so well. And then she's talking about how, as irritating as he is sometimes, I'm staying with Ethan for now because he's firmly in my social circle and it'll be way too much energy to avoid him all summer. Yeah, no. So then she's getting calls from her grandmother while they're doing this list, and she keeps ignoring her grandmother, and she's not answering the phone because she obviously doesn't know at this point that her grandmother is dying. And her grandmother finally texts and says, "It's urgent, call me right away." So she calls her grandmother and her grandma's like, "What are you doing that's so important that you can't answer the phone?" And she's like, "We're working on our loose ends list." And her grandmother is asking what that is. And she's like, "It's a list of things that we want to do before college." And Grandma's response is, "Like blowjobs?" Yeah. At that point, I was pretty much done. So in 8 pages, there's just a lot of crude things, obvious drama in the group of friends and boyfriend that I just don't really care about one bit. I did not enjoy the writing of this. It seemed, I don't know, just, not something that I don't think I'm going to enjoy Grandma in this book. And if she's the one dying, I feel like she's the one that we're going to need to connect with, and not enjoying the way she was introduced. And I'm not really enjoying our main character either in just the 8 pages. I just almost couldn't even make it through the 8 pages. So yeah, this one is definitely getting unhauled, which makes me feel good because it's been sitting there for a couple years and I haven't touched it. So I have no problem getting rid of it. All right, so let me try the next young adult book. All right, so next book was The Season of You and Me, and I read the back before reading a little bit of the first chapter, and this is from 2 perspectives, Cassidy and Brian. So Cassidy is just getting over a big humiliating breakup, so she decides to spend the summer with her dad. So her parents are divorced, and she usually doesn't spend an entire summer at her dad's house, but she decides that's what she needs to get away from all the people that know about her breakup and for not seeing her boyfriend for a whole summer. And then he's going off to college, so she doesn't have to worry about seeing him ever again. So she's going to stay with her dad's at his bed and breakfast on the Jersey Shore. And then also she's going to work at a camp as a camp counselor. And then Brian is also going to be at the camp. And he's kind of just expecting to have a summer where he doesn't have to worry about as much of his problems, about all the things that people keep telling him he'll never do, like never walk and never surf. I guess from reading on Goodreads, I think Brian had an accident and is in a wheelchair, and so that's a new thing that he's dealing with. And going to this camp is more like a way to see how to live life with this new circumstances. Okay, so I didn't even make it through the first chapter again. Let me just preface this by saying that part of why I'm being pretty tough on these young adult books is that the last few young adult contemporary romance kind of books that I have read, I just haven't been loving. Like for months now, I've read a few and just really not liking them, and I'm just wondering if I'm moving away from enjoying young adult romance. There's still some that I like, some certain authors that I enjoy their work, but in general, I'm just getting tired of the drama. Like, I think it's just me and like dealing with the kids all day, and I just don't care to have more drama in my life, and angst and stuff like that. And so I'm just not really enjoying them anymore. And so I'm being really critical. And this one did not pull me in at all. And once again, we've got a grandma. Like, okay, this is the first sentence, like literally. And I'll read it to you, but be aware it does have a bad word in it, in case you have any young ears or things like that. So it says, my Nana had a saying, wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which one gets filled faster. That's the first line. And so I'm like, what is with these books, with these grandmas that are so crude? And yeah, so then she goes on to talk about this breakup that she's having and the fact that, you know, she wished for all these things, wished that they would get back together, wished that things would have gone differently, and that Nana saying basically means, you know, wishes don't count for anything. That, like, you should just stop making wishes. So she's getting ready for this trip to her dad's house. And yeah, just like, she's talking to her best friend. Her best friend's basically just saying, why are you going to the Jersey Shore? Why not just have a random hookup? That'll help you, like, forget him. And she's like, in her mind, she hasn't told her best friend this. She's like, I already did have a random hookup. I had a one night stand with this guy, blah, 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 and like talking about it. And it did not, yeah, I did not find it interesting or good or something that would pull me in. I just didn't enjoy the drama that was happening, that already was happening in the beginning of this book. And so, yeah, I just don't think, I think I'm done. I don't have very many young adult books left on my shelf. And the ones that I did keep are ones that I've had many friends rate really high. So I think they're going to be actually ones I'll enjoy. So I'm basically kind of trying to call all the like YA contemporaries that I just don't think are gonna be my thing anymore. So getting rid of both of those. So let's move on to some adult books. So I'm gonna start with Seasons of the Dragonflies. So I finished the first, well, I actually did two. So I did the preface, or like the prologue, which was the length of a full chapter, and then the first chapter, because this starts like 3 generations earlier in the prologue, and so I knew we wouldn't be following that person, so I figured I should read one chapter from the person we're actually going to follow for the rest of the book. And yeah, I feel like the first 2 books I had a lot of spiciness, so I've calmed down. I don't have spicy feelings about this, but I still wasn't really pulled into this book. So from the back of this book, this is a book that about the Lenore women. So for generations, they have been making this perfume, and something in this perfume is supposed to make the women that wear it become very successful and become the world's most powerful women, is what it says on the back. And so we are following this current generation that is, so like there's the matriarch of the perfume industry named Willow, and her 2 daughters, Maya and Lucia. And Lucia had left her home like 15 years earlier and been living in New York. So we're at this point, Lucia is coming back to the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is where they do this perfume industry. And so I think we're going to be following those sisters reuniting and the mother who runs this company and family drama. So like I said, I read prologue and first chapter, and I just didn't get really pulled in by it. I didn't really love the writing style. So the prologue is weird. It's about like the great grandmother or whatever. So it's 3 generations back. And it took me a little bit to figure out what time period we're in, because she was talking about wearing corsets. She was being the grandmother, or whoever we were following, her name is Serena. She is at this dinner where her dad is introducing the person that she's betrothed to, and she really doesn't want to marry this guy. He's kind of like older and boring. And then there's a man at the dinner that's asking her dad to fund this trip that he's taking to Southeast Asia, because he's like a scientist or something like that. And she kind of falls for him in one night at this at this dinner, and they end up like going off and running away together to Southeast Asia, and after just meeting the same night that she's betrothed, whatever. And so we're like this is just like 10 pages or whatever at the beginning, and we're just like kind of getting a glimpse of their life that they're living in this village and them having kids. And then they find this flower that seems to have a connection to Serena, and that flower they take home to America. And I think at this point we know that it's like the Depression, because the reason they're going home is because the funding has gone down because the stock market crashed. So I'm assuming that's the Great Depression. And so they're going back to America, and she's going to use this flower to start this perfume company. So that's the prologue, the setup of how they start this perfumery. But it was just weird. It was like we were just following this like, you know, kind of whirlwind romance, and then all of a sudden there's like weird stuff going on with the flower. It's obviously is going to have magical realism in it. It was strange. And then we go to the first chapter following Lucia. I'm probably not saying her name right. I'm sorry. And she has just gotten divorced, and that's why she's leaving New York and returning to her family home. And I just didn't find her chapter really interesting either. Like, I just didn't get pulled in by her voice. But I wasn't feeling like, oh, I hate this book like the other two, or whatever. I was just kind of feeling meh. So I decided to look up some good reviews just to kind of feel like, am I not getting enough from this beginning? Maybe there's more to it. And it has pretty low ratings. It has a 3.5 rating, which is not the greatest. And just like from the descriptions people were doing, it just didn't really sound like something I'm going to enjoy. And I wasn't really loving both what I was reading. So I figured, no, I'm going to get rid of this one too. So that's 3 for 3 of things I'm going to unhaul. So hopefully one of these other two is one that I actually want to continue. But I don't have like angry feelings about this one. I'm just not really feeling like I want to take the time. Like, nothing makes me want to just pick this back up and start reading again. And after reading those reviews, I just think it's time to just move on to something else. Hello, we're back in the same place, but you might be able to tell I have different clothes and different coat on today because it's the next day. It's chillier out today than it was yesterday, so I have pulled back out the winter coat because the kids don't feel the cold because they're running around all over the place, but me sitting here, I'm chilly. So yesterday I ended up reading the first chapter of Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe before I went to bed. I just wanted to kind of get a jump on finishing this video today, and I had just enough time at the end of the day before bedtime that I didn't want to like jump into like the book I'd already been reading, and I thought a chapter would be perfect. And finally I found a book that I enjoyed and I want to keep reading. So I just feel bad because the first 3 books in this video I was really bashing and really not enjoying, but this one I almost kept reading. If it hadn't been Midnight, I probably would have kept going. It was really fun. So this is also a little bit of a magical realism book, but the magical realism in this one felt a lot more fun and whimsical than what was coming out of this one. So this is about Anna Kate, who her grandmother has just passed away. Her mother has already passed, so Anna Kate is the only one to inherit, and she has to go to her grandmother's town in Alabama that she has never been to. Her mom left this town. I don't remember what the town is called, but her mom left the town in Alabama when she was pregnant with Anna Kate and swore she would never go back. So Anna Kate has never visited her grandmother in her hometown. Her grandmother always came to New York to see them. I think it was New York. And so this is the first time that she's going to her grandmother's home to kind of close up the estate. And her grandmother runs this cafe called the Blackbird Cafe. And so she has to figure out what to do with the business and all that stuff. And so I think it's going to have that really small town charm with a little bit of magical thing. We find out in the first chapter that we get a little flashback to her childhood and the stories her grandmother told her. And her grandmother would tell her these like kind of magical stories about the blackbirds in the town. Blackbirds are not native to North America, so that's like kind of part of the like magic and mystery, that there's these blackbirds that are only in this town, and you know they're normally only in Europe kind of area, and so that's part of the mystique or whatever. It just was really compelling, well written. I liked the introduction to the town and everything like that. And so yeah, one chapter I was already absorbed and into this. So this one, out of the first 4 books, finally I found one that I'm excited to continue. So this one also had the highest ratings on Goodreads of all of these, so this is probably like a more universally liked book. So I'm excited to find one I actually enjoy. So now there's just one more book, The Simplicity of Cider. So let's hope for another good one. But then again, if it is one I don't enjoy, I don't mind getting some of these books out of the way. It's better to know whether I'm interested in them or not. I only want to be keeping books on my shelf that I'm really interested in. So either way, let's start the first chapter of this one. Okay, so I had to change locations again because the kids wanted snacks. So I had finished reading the first chapter of The Simplicity of Cider, and this is one that it just didn't give me any feelings one way or the other. Like, it seemed like it was leading to something interesting, but there just wasn't a lot of substance in the first chapter, so I didn't feel like negative feelings towards it, but I also wasn't like compelled to keep going. But after I read through the synopsis, so this is about a woman named Santa who this apple orchard has been in her family for years. She makes cider and sells at a roadside stand and all that. And I think there's also another perspective that I didn't read yet, which is a single dad, and he and his son come to the town where the orchard is. And so I think it's gonna be a romance between those two, but then also about their family business that's having some problems. So I think I'm gonna keep this and pick it up again in the fall, because the fall is a great time to read about apple orchard, cider, and stuff like that. And if I can't get into it in the fall, then I'll get rid of it. But there was nothing negative that makes me not want to give it a try, but I think that would be better time of year to feel pulled in. And then I also, because I was like, well, I can't really make a decision about this author based on that one chapter. So I ended up pulling out the other book that I own that is written by her. I had a third one, but I think I already actually got rid of that one because it had really bad reviews. So I had this other one called The Optimist Guide to Letting Go. And so I decided to read the first chapter of this one just to see how I felt. And this was a longer first chapter. And this is a book about 3 generations of women. So there's the grandmother. We are mainly following, at least the first chapter was from the perspective of the mother, and then there's a teenage daughter. And so this woman that we're following, the mother, what's her name, Gina, her husband passed away, and now she, because of, I think, the money from him passing away, she bought a food truck. And so she's running this food truck, and that's kind of keeping her busy to not think about her husband, to try to not be overcome by grief. But then she's having a lot of trouble with both her teenage daughter having teen angst going on, and then her mother is having some health issues and things like that. So I think it's just about these 3 generations of women and dealing with grief and family issues and all that stuff. And this first chapter, once again, didn't really pull me in, but the topic of this one is less interesting to me than this one. Like this one being kind of possibly a romance, saving your family business and stuff like that, appeals to me more than this one dealing with a lot of family drama. I looked up some reviews just to kind of solidify, and it seemed like a lot of people were annoyed by the teenager having a lot of teenage angst problems, and they found the grandmother really frustrating as well because she was really judgmental. After reading that longer first chapter, nothing really makes me want to continue reading this one, so there's no reason to keep it on my shelf if I'm not interested in it. So I ended up adding an extra one. So out of the 6 books that I tried, I am keeping 2. I am getting rid of The Optimist Guide to Letting Go, The Loose Ends List, The Season of You and Me, and Season of the Dragonflies. I'm gonna keep Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe, and I think I'm gonna read this one pretty soon because I was enjoying it and I wanna just keep reading. And then I'm going to keep this one, but save it for the fall, till it's apple time. Sorry, the kids are playing very loudly. I'm just in the mood to get rid of stuff, so this is kind of the best time to do a try a chapter and unhaul some of these books because, yeah, I just in the mood to get rid of half of my stuff. I know obviously I'm not gonna get rid of that much stuff, but does anyone else get that feeling it's spring? I'm I need to get rid of things, especially with COVID and being in our house so much in the last year. I feel the clutter coming in at me, so I just want to get rid of stuff. So that's it. I'm feeling good about getting rid of the things I'm not liking, and I'm really excited about reading this one. So that's it for me. I will see you next time. Bye.